Did Tywin Lannister have a mistress? And I don't just mean Shae. He's one of the most outwardly proper and judgmental characters in the story, but there are more than a few hints that this may have just been a front. Let's take a look. Hi everyone, this is Robert. Welcome to In Deep Geek. If you like theories, background, history and lore about A Song of Ice and Fire, The Lord of the Rings and The Witcher, this is the place for you. Welcome. Tywin Lannister was assiduous in establishing and maintaining his public profile. He was the person behind the Reigns of Castamere, so everyone knew how he dealt with his opponents, and he clearly revelled in his no-nonsense, fiercely intelligent reputation, part of which was his obvious eschewing of material indulgences. He drank only sparingly, particularly compared to his children, ate modestly, and had seemingly been celibate since the death of his wife a quarter of a century or so before the main story of A Song of Ice and Fire. Everyone knew that Tywin had been madly in love with his wife, Joanna. They had been married in the year 263 AC, when Tywin was 21 and a prodigiously young Hand of the King, and she bore him 3 children, Cersei, Jaime, and Tyrion. There were rumours that perhaps Aerys the Mad King had taken certain unwanted liberties with Joanna at various times, to use the Maester's phrasing, and therefore there were some whispered rumours about the parentage of Tywin's children. I've done other videos about that if you're interested, but no one doubted that whatever had happened in secret, Tywin was devoted to his Joanna until her death shortly after Tyrion's birth, which makes his moral stance afterwards understandable to most, even if they didn't agree with it. When his father died, Tywin forced his mistress to do a shame walk of atonement through Lannisport before banishing her from the Westerlands. When he discovered that Tyrion had secretly wed someone he didn't deem suitable, he had her punished cruelly and labelled her a whore. He repeatedly and publicly disapproved of Tyrion's rather rakish lifestyle, and in Book 1 banned him from taking his latest lover to King's Landing with him. So Tywin, whatever else he believed, clearly disapproved of Lannisters taking lovers on the side. He thought it brought shame on the house. To be honest, a lot of this probably comes from his own upbringing. His father kept mistresses and was a weak ruler. Everyone acknowledged it. Of course, for Tywin not to be seen as a hypocrite, all that had to apply to him too. And as far as the world were concerned, he did stick to that. But there are hints that this was all just a front. He didn't really believe that on a deep moral level. It was more about the image of the Lannisters being projected. So as long as no one thought he was doing things that might cause shame to his house, it was all okay. And the first hint that this might be the case is not really a hint at all. It's pretty blatant. When Tyrion crept into his father's chambers at the end of A Storm of Swords, Shae was there, lying naked in his bed. This was no set-up, by the way, other than Varys probably knowing and gently pushing Tyrion in that direction. Shae thought the sound of Tyrion entering was Tywin, and was visibly shocked when it turned out to be Tyrion. Tywin presumably had already seen that she could be discreet, and also bought. Perhaps we might therefore think that this was a momentary lapse by Tywin, but there's more. In fact, there is a persistent fan theory that Tywin had long done the very things he criticised Tyrion for. It's just that whereas Tyrion did it all publicly, he did it in secret. When in A Clash of Kings, Tyrion wants to keep Shae's presence a secret, but still visit her regularly, he confides in Varys. Tyrion had set Shae up in a manse on the far side of the city, but knew that Cersei and others would be keeping an eye on him, and so he needed to find a way to visit her in secret. Varys told Tyrion to visit a certain brothel in the city, Chitaea's, an upmarket sort of place where you might expect Tyrion to go, given his reputation. He does, and follows instructions up some stairs to a turret room with only one door, through the back of a wardrobe and down a hidden ladder, at the bottom of which Varys was waiting. Varys then guided him along a passageway under Rhaenys' hill and out into an anonymous-looking stable. Tyrion could then don a disguise and make his way to Shae's, while anyone who had followed him would think him safely in Chitaea's for a couple of hours or so. Tyrion is understandably intrigued by all this. How is it a brothel happens to have a secret entrance, he asks. The tunnel was dug for another king's hand, whose honour would not allow him to enter such a house openly. Chitaea has closely guarded the knowledge of its existence. And yet you knew of it. Little birds fly through many a dark tunnel. Careful, the stairs are steep. They emerged through a trap at the back of a stable, having come perhaps a distance of 3 blocks under Rhaenys' hill. Who was that other hand? Could it have been Tywin? Certainly his honour would not have allowed him to enter such a house openly, although before we get into the clues George R. R. Martin leaves us, let's just pause for a second to appreciate the irony that this mysterious hand, perhaps Tywin, used this secret passage to get into the brothel, whereas Tyrion is using it to get out of there, to visit the woman he is falling in love with. Who is being the more honourable? Okay, so why might we think this is Tywin, other than the obvious satisfying narrative symmetry? And we should probably start by clarifying that George R. R. Martin has been asked about this a few times, and usually just replies with something vague like, interesting theory. Well, anyway, there have clearly been quite a few Hands of the King in the last 300 years or so since Aegon's invasion, and we know the names of nearly 50 by my count, with a few gaps in the record indicating there may have been even more than that. That said, we can probably rule out those before King Jaehaerys I. King's Landing wasn't really a city then, so tunnels to brothels weren't needed. We can probably also rule out those who were in post during wartime or for less than about 5 years, say, as a tunnel like that would require some planning and execution, and some confidence that the stables or the brothel wouldn't be destroyed at any moment. Basically, that leaves us with just a handful of long-serving hands, most of whom we know quite a bit about. Septon Bath, Otto Hightower, Lionel Strong, the future Viserys II Targaryen, Baelor Breakspear, Bloodraven, Tywin Lannister, and Jon Arryn. And looking at that list, a surprising number of them were men who might, for various reasons, not want to be seen entering a brothel. But we can probably cut the list down even further. Varys knowing about the tunnel isn't a surprise, but him knowing it was built for a Hand of the King suggests some recency. The post of Master of Whisperers wasn't exactly a seamless chain of post holders leaving each other hand-over notes with all the secrets of their trade. Him not naming that hand also suggests it might have been quite recent. There's no reason why he would be reticent to protect the delicate reputation of Septon Bath, say, a couple of 100 years after his death. But even more suggestive is the fact that this tunnel goes to Chataea's brothel in particular, because the biggest risk in building and using the tunnel is actually not the tunnel itself, but the fact that people needed to know about it. In particular, the proprietor of that building, Chataea. So who is Chataea? Well, she comes from the Summer Islands and believes, for cultural and religious reasons, that sex work is not only morally okay, but honours the gods. She kept that secret passage a secret for a long time and takes great pride in her establishment. Yes, a good choice for someone to trust with that kind of secret. So although we don't know exactly how long that building has been there, its reputation was largely founded on its proprietor, who has been in King's Landing for at least 18 years, judging from the age of her daughter who was born there, but surely can't have run the establishment for many years before that, given how old she appears to be. So putting all that together, although we don't have anything definitive, the context clues suggest this mysterious Hand of the King was in post at some point in the last 2 decades or so, which leaves just Jon Arryn and Tywin Lannister, both of whom may not have wanted to be seen going into Chataea's. Although it has to be said that, although Jon Arryn doesn't seem the sort, he also doesn't base his reputation on it. We don't hear of him chastising his foster son Robert Baratheon for his indiscretions, for example. On the face of it, Tywin seems the more likely candidate. But does George R. R. Martin leave us any more clues? Perhaps. This is how the room the secret passage goes to, presumably where the miscreant hand stayed while there, is described when Tyrion goes there. Within the room was a great canopied bed, a tall wardrobe decorated with erotic carvings, and a narrow window of leaded glass in a pattern of red and yellow diamonds. Red and yellow? Those are Lannister colours. There's also a lamp outside described as a globe of gilded metal and scarlet glass, a red light, so perhaps not surprising, but again, Lannister colours. And as for the workers there, our attention is brought to Marai, who is described like this. Marai was a cool, pale, delicate girl Tyrion had noticed once or twice. Green eyes and porcelain skin, long, straight, silvery hair, very lovely, but too solemn by half. A serious countenance, slim, green eyes and hair that is elsewhere clarified as silver gold. able to read as well, which is unusual for a sex worker in King's Landing, and quite insightful, quickly understanding why Tyrion is there and that he won't get distracted by any other girls, even betting on it. That sounds quite Lannistery. Might Maura be Tywin's bastard daughter? She is still young, but older than Shae, so born at the latest in the year 280 AC, so definitely while Tywin was hand. And if we're looking for possible Targaryen bastards elsewhere, there's also Donal Hill in the Night's Watch, who also has suspiciously Lannistery looks, perhaps even more so, and even claims to be a Lannister bastard. So, did Tywin have that tunnel built and father bastard children? Was he a massive hypocrite? We don't have any 100% proof here, other than what happened with Shae, but in my mind, probably. The timing clues are all there. Maura comes across as a Lannister bastard daughter. The stained glass window colouring is suggestive, to say the least, and overall it just works in a narrative and character sense. Tywin hates on Tyrion not just because he thinks Tyrion brings shame on the family, or is weak-willed, or even because Tywin blames him for the death of his beloved Joanna, but because he feels, and secretly gives into, those same base urges that Tyrion does openly. Tyrion is clever, analytical, and scheming like Tywin, and is like him in other ways he never even knew. As Jenna Lannister, Tywin's sister and Tyrion's aunt, says to Jaime, "Sweetling, I have known you since you were a babe at Joanna's breast. You smile like Geryon and fight like Tig, and there's some of Kevin in you, else you would not wear that cloak. But Tyrion is Tywin's son, not you. I said so once to your father's face, and he would not speak to me for half a year. Men are such thundering great fools, even the sort who come along once in 1,000 years." Or as Tyrion himself says to his father, among the last things he ever said to him as Tywin sat there dying and Shae lay dead in the bed next door, the evidence of Tywin's true nature. "I believe I'm you," says Tyrion, writ small. Tyrion could finally face up to it, even if Tywin could not. If you'd like to see more A Song of Ice and Fire videos, please click on the link on the left of your screen. Or if you'd like to support this channel, thank you. There's a link to my Patreon page on the right of your screen. That's all for this time. Thanks for watching. I'll see you again soon.